I want you to think about this question. What are you most passionate about? What are you most passionate about? What's like the center of your life? Like everything else kind of comes after, focuses around, must be pushed out of the way of. What are you most passionate about? I paused to let you actually think. Some of you guys haven't even asked that question to yourself. Just been surviving. You're like, I'm just paying bills, Cam. But what are you most passionate about? I asked this question about a month or so back on social media because I was thinking about this, and I got a bunch of different answers. Now, I do believe that mine are going to be a little bit skewed from the average public because of me being a pastor, a lot of people who follow me. But about a quarter of the people who responded by saying some sort of like interest, like a hobby or some sort of activity or something that they do, which is cool. About a quarter of people, they responded by saying something along the lines of family, right? Or friendships or relationships were really what was most important. And then this is where I think my results are probably skewed. About half of the people said that their faith was the most important thing. Now, a lot of you're my friends though too, so maybe that's the case with you. They said, actually my faith, the journey I've been on in my faith, what God's doing in my faith, something to that extent was the most passionate thing in their life, the thing that they spent the most time focused on, the thing they were most, thinking about in the next year. And the reason why I ask that is because as we're going into a new year, if you don't know that thing, I wonder if you're going to do anything that's actually going to take you towards it. Now, we'll come back to that in just a little bit because we got to do some recap, then we got to go forward, and then I'll make sure that we apply that. So lock that in if you want to. If you're a note taker, I love you, Kim. Thank you. Take notes if you want to. She gets bonus points today because she has a notebook sitting out in front of her. Take that down for a second so you can come back to it. But today we actually do, at the beginning of the year, we always look back and then we look forward. And today when we look back at 2023, I want to talk to you about where God's taken us in this last year so then we can point forward in 2024. And as I've said this before, when I say us as a church, I really do mean us as a collective group of people. What a church is it's a group of Christians. It's a group of believers who all push in the same direction. We all are individuals, but then what we do is we join together and we all push in the same direction, and that's really what a church is. And at the beginning of this last year in 2023, God kind of put this verse on our heart, 1 Corinthians 3, 9 through 15, and it says, we are both God's workers, and you are God's field. You are God's building. Because of God's grace to me, I've laid the foundation like an expert builder, and now others are building on it, but whoever's building on this foundation must be careful. For no one can lay any foundation other than the one we already have, Jesus Christ. Anybody who builds on that foundation may use a variety of materials, gold, silver, jewels, wood, hay, or straw, but on Judgment Day, fire will reveal what kind of work each builder has done. The fire will show if a person's work has any value. If the work survives, the builder will receive a reward. But if the work is burned up, the builder will suffer great loss. The builder will be saved, but like someone barely escaping through a wall of flames. And I told you what's so interesting about this verse is that Paul was saying we start our faith on this foundation of Jesus, but then what's interesting is all of us have the opportunity to build something with our lives on this foundation. And he says, and someday there's this really important day coming called Judgment Day where our entire lives will be laid out before God and it will be looked at. Now, real quick, this is a great note for us, depending on where you're at in your faith. He makes clear once again, you're not saved by what you do. He says, in fact, the person who everything in their life is burned up, they will be saved, but as though somebody who gets pulled from flames, where it's like you don't have anything left. Like basically like after the house is burned down, you're like, I got the shirt on my back, nothing else. He's like, that's what some people will have happen. They put their trust in Jesus, they get there, they kind of have nothing else, but they're there, which awesome. That's still a good day, right? But he said, it will be a sad day though. Because when you get to heaven and you get to Judgment Day, you'll look back at your life and he says, and some people will go, none of that accounted for anything. I spent all those years on earth, all those years struggling, all those years working, and none of it actually did anything of value when it comes to eternity. He says, now there are some people, though, instead, they'll use their lives in order to build something that actually lasts, something that's truly meaningful, something that changes people's lives, something that actually changes people's eternities. It means there are other people here, there are blessings here in eternity because of what they did. And I told you last year, the question I wanted you to ask yourself is this: what are you going to build? Are you going to build something fast, or are you going to build something that lasts? Are you going to build something temporary, or are you going to build something for legacy? And I told you the secret, and this still continues along if you ever wonder about this. The secret to building something that truly lasts is very, very simple. You find where God is working and you join it. You don't have to differentiate. You don't have to spend a bunch of time soul searching. You just find where you see God moving and then you join it. And that's the shortcut to immediately knowing that you're building something that lasts. So last year I invited you. Would you build his church in 2023? I said, we've been talking all about like building legacy, and this is the year, on January of 2023, I said, this is the year I feel like that word build, the verb is the focus, not the noun, the verb, that we need to focus on the action to build his church. And I said that in the first weekend of January. What I didn't know is 6 weeks later, we were going to find out, hey, interesting news, you guys don't have a place to meet come October anymore. God is so good at speaking what needs to be said before the reality comes to pass. Isn't that wild? God tells our church, this next year is going to be about action. You need to put a verb to your faith. And then like 6 weeks later, our landlord's like, hey, FYI, you know how you said you were going to be like a year from now? How about like 6 months from now? And we literally had to shift everything because of that and say like, wow, okay, we literally have to take every bit of effort we have and put it towards building his church, to creating a space, to creating a pattern so that we can actually have somewhere to meet come this October. And it was wild, but God did so many amazing things. When we actually found out about this situation, it was wild, okay? When we found out about this in February, we were still 10 feet below the floor in the middle of that building. Actually, do you guys have my pictures for me? I have picture number 1. This is where we were at when we found out that we had no building come October. You can kind of see, that's Jeff Rothrock down 4 feet below the floor. That's his head sitting next to that pipe. That's what our building looked like when we found out. We were repairing the plumbing underneath of that floor. We had just tore stuff out, all the concrete was gone, and we were fixing the plumbing. And we found out you don't have a building. And this is where we were sitting at. And we talked to everyone who was involved in it, and we said, what should we do? And everyone said, we just build the church. We just go. We can't sit back. We can't pull back. We can't find some other different direction. We need to go. And people, went to a miraculous amount. They went all in. I need to show you this because this is really what's crazy when you think about this last year. 9 months ago, this is where we were at. This was concrete prep. This was just 9 months ago. We finally finished all the plumbing. We were putting in the gravel and starting to figure out how we were going to pour the concrete. A handful of men in our church taught themselves how to pour concrete, and volunteers poured the concrete in the center of this building. How crazy is that? 6 months ago, we began our Hope Week demo, and we started tearing down the front of the building, and we finally put up our first walls. 6 months ago, this is what our kids' hallway looked like and what our kids' rooms look like. Just studs. That's it. Trying to run electrical. All those walls put up by volunteers, all that electrical put in by electricians who volunteered their time on weekends to put in our electricity. Amazing. 3 months ago, just 3 months ago, we were doing this. We were tearing everything we had out of another building and figuring out what to do with it. This is 3 months ago. We literally were taking everything down, piling it up, going, how in the world do we move this stuff? Where do we take this stuff? I don't know who bought all this stuff. We were moving. I'm like, where did all this come from? I don't even know. We have like 2 storage units. This place is full. We still have storage there. We need to have a yard sale. It's crazy. But listen, over the course of this year, hundreds of people served literally thousands and thousands of hours. And when we heard about this in February, when we shot forward and we said, we think that if we did this right, October, we could shut down for a few weeks to move and we could meet the first weekend in November, it was impossible. And we met the first weekend in November. It was miraculous. Miraculous what we got to see God do in the course of this year. Some of you, you've just come since the beginning of a year and you're like, what? Like, you thought this has been here. You're like, dude, a year ago, there was nothing here. Like, literally nothing. This was filled up with car parts. The front was like still completely different. We tore all that out. The middle was literally, it looked like Kosovo. It had been bombed. There was just dirt everywhere. It was amazing. We got to the middle of the summer, and because of what we had to do to focus, we had to cancel our Hope Week and make it a home week, which is really, really difficult for us to do because we love Hope Week. But we said we have to focus this year because we can't do Hope Weeks if we have nowhere to run it out of. And during the course of that week, people served 3,026 hours in 7 days, and volunteers in our church accomplished $75,000 worth of work in 7 days. Is that not amazing? When we started in this and we've realized that God was moving us sooner than we wanted to, I started to realize maybe the reason why is because we had really already outgrown the last facility. We had really already outgrown it. It was to the place where it was difficult to do what we were doing in it. It had a lot of roadblocks to us to continue to grow. Because over the rest of this year, it wasn't just that God grew like, okay, a team of people to build a building. God was growing our church. Right now, as we finish the end of 2023, go into 2024, our average weekend is over 350 people on the weekend at Acts Church between our two services. Acts Kids is now over 100 kids every single weekend. We were like, literally in the last facility, we're like, we don't know what we're going to do when we hit 100 kids. We won't have room for them. We're now over 100 every single week in our Acts Kids, and we were able to move to 2 services so we can actually take kids in both of them, which is absolutely amazing. When we had Easter this last year, we recognized the reality of why we needed to move. At Easter this last year in 2023, we had 492 adults and 167 kids show up. We had 659 people come, and we're like, this doesn't work. We need to move, right? But you know what's amazing? As we finished out this year, and we got in this space in November, God continued to grow our church, and this is really cool. At Christmas this year, we had 466 adults and 109 kids, which was 575 people at our Christmas service. Now, here's what's so crazy about that. That's 200 more people than we had in Christmas last year in 2022. Just a year previously to then, 200 more people came to our Christmas services this year in this space. More than 50% growth over the last year. Even though we didn't have a building, we were able to host our Alpha groups. Kim, thank you once again. She's getting double shout outs today because she helps run all of our stuff with Alpha. We hosted Alpha groups in 5 different locations, and even though we had no building, this is what's awesome, 50 people still went through the Alpha course and came closer to Jesus. Because we used creativity to solve that problem. We had people loan us spaces to host our weekend from our church, and it was amazing. But during all of this, what's really great too is God changed lives. Man, he changed lives. This last summer, we hosted our largest baptism service ever. We were able to baptize 37 people on one Sunday. It's amazing. During the course of the year, where we take kids and we take them through Jesus' words and we have them fill out what are called Yes Jesus cards, where they give their life to Jesus or they recommit their faith to Jesus and say, yeah, he's my forever friend. We had 118 children fill out Yes Jesus cards in this last year and say, yeah, Jesus is my best friend. He's my Savior. He's my Lord. And during our services, we had 85 adults raise their hands and say, yes, I want to give my life to Jesus for the very first time or for the first time in a long time. Is that not astounding, friends? Do those numbers not like, you go, what? How is that even possible? Because when we started the year and we're like, we got to build his church, I just wondered if it was going to be like, well, that's all we're going to have time to do. But God is so good that even in the midst of that, he was building and he was growing his church. Some of you, right? This is what's amazing, right? Some of you just started coming and hanging out with us this last year, didn't you? How cool is that? Like during the fact of us being like, we got to move and we got to do all that, even in all that chaos, he connected us with you so that we could be friends, so that you could continue to grow in your faith. But one of the things that 2023 was really, really marked by, and one of the things that I will never, ever forget is the level of generosity that we saw in our church. I'll be really real with you, okay? Generosity has always been a struggle for us as a church because it's always been a struggle for me. I have a hard time believing God sometimes for the financial side of what we do as a church. And sometimes it's very difficult for me to believe what we could do. In fact, I told you in 2020, when we started this whole move where we felt like God was saying, hey, there's a spot I need you to move to be able to get ready to increase in influence and all these things. I told you we don't have a building on the horizon. I don't even know what building, but I want you as a church to believe and start giving generously. And as God grows our church, what we're going to do is we're not going to spend a dime more than we used to. We're going to lock our budget, and everything above that we're going to put together, because our prayer is to raise $250,000 to be able to buy a building. We did that for 2 years, and in the middle of a pandemic, when it seemed like everything was impossible, we finished those 2 years. God showed us a building. We bought this at the end of 2021, and instead of $250,000, we actually raised $315,000. We made the $250,000 in 2 years. That sounded impossible. Impossible. But this last year was even crazier. Those 2 years were miraculous, but then in 2023, as we kept grinding through this and trying to push as fast as we could to get this done and hiring some other contractors to help with drywall or paint or these other pieces to say, we got to get this stuff done, right? We ran out of money. Some of you guys were here. I literally made a video and I'm like, so good news, bad news, right? Like, we have a bunch of money in the bank, but when we total up all of our bills, it's more than that total. Crazy, right? And we told you, we're literally $90,000 short to finishing this first stage. Because of increased costs, because of increased labor, because of what we hired, we're $90,000 short. And I told you guys, I feel like God is telling us not to slow down, but to move forward. And I would just pray and ask you, would God put it on your heart to give in any way we can so we can actually get this first stage finished, get into this building and make this a reality. And friends, in 4 weeks time, our church raised another $250,000 in 4 weeks. We didn't make $250,000. We raised not $90,000. We raised $250,000 in 4 weeks. We were not only able to just complete this first stage, we were able to hire more and get more of it done before we even got into this space. Astounding. But some of you guys were here on New Year's Eve, and you heard me say this, and this is where I definitely think 2023 is just miraculous, and God showing us that he'll provide, that he'll build his church. When we asked for $250,000 at the beginning of 2020, 2 years, that seemed impossible. When we needed that money during that time frame, and in 4 weeks, God raised $250,000, $250,000 in 4 weeks, that was impossible. But just a little over a month or so ago, I had somebody who doesn't even attend our church yet, who watches online, who texted me and said, can I meet with you? And they showed up and said, I feel like God wants me to give this to you. He told me to give it to the place that has the most kingdom impact possible. I think it's yours. And they walked out, and I opened that check, and one person wrote us a check for $250,000. Someone who doesn't even attend our church. They said, I feel like God told me to give this to you. And I remember praying afterwards and realizing God just showing me, listen, there is nothing impossible if I'm the one who's doing this work. $250,000 in 2 years seemed impossible. Well, then we did it in 4 weeks. And he's like, I can do it in 1 day if I want to get something done. I can do it in 1 day if I need to get you going in regards to what we need to do. And because of that finance, we're able to take out less debt, and we can already start the next stage of our build out, of finishing areas back here, of finishing our office space, of finishing the other rooms in this space without even an ask in regards to finance, because God's already supplied the beginning of that project. How awesome is that? Listen to me. I told you the secret to building something that lasts is find where Jesus is working. And I can tell you without a doubt, not because I'm the pastor, but just because I get to watch it, Jesus is working here. That stuff is miraculous stuff. That's the stuff that you point at, you're like, okay, but that's impossible. And you're like, right. Unless God is showing up, that's impossible. And when you see God working, I invite you to be part of where he's moving, because that's how you build something that lasts. Jesus is working here. He is building his church, and we are blessed to be a part of it. Now, as we look forward to 2024, okay, where do we go from here as a church, right? Because you're like, well, I guess it's all going to be a letdown from here, Cameron, right? I mean, that's crazy. It can't get any better than that. But I don't believe that, because, see, the reason why God gives us great things is so we can do great things. The reason why God gifts people with talents is so they can use those talents. The reason why God gives people gifts is so they can use those gifts. The reason why God would help us build a facility, be able to build this, is so that we could continue to build his church in this area. So as I look forward to 2024, and I'm asking God, like, well, what do you want from us? And I will tell you this, make sure you understand this. When I pray to God, what do you want for our church? I don't just mean as an organization. Sometimes people think like I mean like the business, the organization. That's not it at all. I mean us as a community of believers. I pray and I ask God, listen, my job as the pastor isn't to just try to motivate people or direct people or try to get the business to be successful. That's not my job. My job is to listen to God and then bring to you, here's what I believe God is pointing out for our lives. We're a church. God speaks to us as a church, and this is something that he's put in front of us, because I wonder if it's not something for you as well. So when I started thinking about 2024, and I thought, God, what's our focus? What's our focus? I felt like God said focus. And I was like, yes, what's our focus? And I felt like God said like focus. And I was like, yes, what's our focus? And I felt like God said focus. Focus. I was like, focus. The focus is focus? And I felt him lead me to this verse, and then it all of a sudden clicked into place where it makes sense. Proverbs 4:25-27 says this: look straight ahead and fix your eyes on what lies before you. Mark out a straight path for your feet and stay on the safe path. Don't get sidetracked. Keep your feet from following evil. You see, at the beginning of this year, as I was thinking, for our church, for our people, what's our new direction? For our church, for our people, what's our new direction? I felt like God said, straight is your new direction. Straight. I don't need you to turn. I don't need you to pivot. You've been laying a foundation to continue on in this path for the last 3 years. I need you to go straight. I need you to focus and not get distracted, because there are a million things that are going to want to steal your attention. I've been laying all this foundation work for what I want to do, and now at the beginning of this next year, there's going to be a million things wanting to take your attention away from it, and what I just need you to do is to focus so that you can be part of what I'm getting ready to do. Proverbs 4:25 is the verse that stands out to me. Put it up there again. Look straight ahead and fix your eyes on what lies before you. Leave that up there for a second. This is so good. That first part of this it's 2 parts in one verse. The first part can be translated as put your eyes straight ahead. Now, eyes don't just mean eyes. It doesn't just mean our eyes, because actually they use that exact same word in Genesis 3:7 that says, at that moment their eyes were opened and they suddenly felt shame at their nakedness. So they sewed fig leaves together and covered themselves. When they tasted the fruit in the garden, it says their eyes were open. Their eyes were always open. They weren't blind before them. What it means is their ability to perceive, right? Their perception circuit, their spot of attention. And it says that you need to get your attention straight ahead. Listen, there are lots and lots of things vying for your attention in 2024. But you are meant to focus that attention on one key thing this next year. The second part, where it says fix your eyes on what lies before you, another way that's translated is to fix your gaze on what lies before you. But you know what that verse actually translates into the original Hebrew? It's interesting. The original verse of it says this: to fix your eyelids. To fix your eyelids. That's a weird way of saying it, isn't it? But I realize that it makes so much sense. You know what that's saying? It's saying open up your eyes, right? Fix your eyelids. It's like some of you kind of are like squinting at what's going on. You're kind of tired. And he's like, open your eyes to what is ahead, right? The idea is to get your eyes open so that you can clearly see what God has put before you. So here's what I want us to lean into in 2024. Here's what I wonder if God is speaking to you in 2024. Personally for your life, then together for us as a church in 2024, for us to focus. And I'll say it this way: less distractions, more clarity. Less distractions and more clarity. First of all, less distractions. In order to focus, you have to have a center point. That's one of the first things that focus means. It kind of has a dual meaning. The first means to take and to sharpen or hone down. That's one of the ways you can use the word focus. And this is really important because you have to have a central focus. I asked you at the beginning, what are you most passionate about? What's that central thing in your life? Hold this in your mind for a second. Because especially in our American world, listen, there are an endless number of things that you can spend your life on. Whenever I talk about our life, I always go back to this. You'll hear me say this a million times if you stick around for any length of time. Your life is made of time, energy, and money. That's all that your life is made up of. You just exchange those things for each other. And this world will vie for those three things: for your time, for your energy, and for your money. A million different directions. But in order to accomplish anything, you have to realize that the broad majority of what is around you are nothing more than distractions. They're nothing more than distractions. This comes true with our faith. The psalmist in Psalm 119 spoke of this in regards to him. He had a faith in God, and he spoke about these distractions, saying this, Psalm 119, 35 through 37. Make me walk along the path of your commands, for that's where my happiness is found. Give me an eagerness for your laws rather than a love for money. Turn my eyes from worthless things, and give me life through your word. I love this because here's what the psalmist says: I have this tendency to walk down a bunch of random paths. I have a tendency to head in a bunch of different directions. But every single time I walk down these random paths, they don't lead to happiness. He says, one of my distractions is money. I always get so caught up in the money and the love of money. But, that's a distraction from what actually gives me life, which is what you have for my life. And I love this. He says, turn my eyes from worthless things. Turn my eyes from worthless things and give me life through your word. He says, I want to have a vibrant life. But he said, there's so many things that are so worthless. They take all my time, but they don't actually lead to a thriving inside of me. I need you to get this. Distractions in and of themselves aren't necessarily sinful. Some of you guys, you've become a Christian recently, and you figure, what a lot of your faith is about is stop doing bad stuff so you can do good stuff. And that's true. But actually, one of the other really, really important things in regards to you actually accomplishing something with your faith is to stop doing distracting stuff so you can do purposeful stuff. A lot of things that are distractions aren't sinful in themselves. I have conversations with people all the time where they're like, is this sinful? Is this actually sinful, Cameron? And sometimes they'll be like, no, in the Bible it doesn't necessarily see that sinful, but you know what it could be? Wasteful. It might just be wasteful for you and for your life. I need you to get this, okay? When we talk about focus, it doesn't mean just doing less. Because I'm a really type A person. My wife can attest. She just told me the other day she was going to have an intervention for me because I had a pain in my side that wouldn't go away for a week. And she's like, we're going to call an intervention and stop you. Because I love progress. Man, I love progress. And when people are like, you need to focus, what I hear is you need to take and cut things out of your life and become lazier and become a monk and just sit around doing nothing. And I'm like, no, never. Ugh, disgusting, right? But I need you to get this because that's not what focus is. I wanted to draw this to you because this is how I think about it, because I think what some of you would think when I say focus is that you have a list of things that you do. And what I mean with focus is what you just need to do is you need to just you started here and you just need to take and you just need to cut that off and don't do those anymore so you can do these. And you just need to do less things. which just makes me angry to think about crossing stuff off of what I have to accomplish. Anybody else? Anybody really type A like me? You're like, no, that's annoying, right? But that's not what focus is. Focus isn't more lazy. You know what focus is? It's more accurate. Focus isn't more lazy. It's not more like laid back, like just chill, man. What focus is it's more accurate. A better description would be this. It would be like having a target. And the problem is with most of us, we participate in so many random things that we have all these points in our life of what we're doing. And we only get so many days, we only get so many hours, we only get so many shots in our life. And what focus is it's becoming more accurate and saying, look, you took 100 shots, but they're all over the place. You said you said that was your passion. What if instead of shooting all over the place and all these different random things, what if you just put all the shots right here? What if you drew this and said, I'm not shooting outside of that circle anymore. I'm not going to do these things out here. They're a waste of time. I'm going to spend more time placing my shots right close to what my passion is. You see, what focus is about narrowing that in, getting more accurate. I like to say it this way. What if you could do less, but you could do more of it more often and get better results? What if instead of doing so many different random things, what if you could actually take and you could say, actually, I'm just going to get more accurate in what I do because that's actually my passion. So I'm going to put more right there. Right there. I'm going to spend more hours. I'm going to spend more time. I'm going to spend more energy, more money right there because that's where I'm getting the results. It doesn't mean doing less. It just means me doing more of what actually matters. For you, instead of doing 1,000 different things this year, what if you found the top 10 or 20 and you were able to do them way more times than last year? What if you found the 10 or 20 most valuable things for your focus, your purpose, your passion, and what if instead of doing it once or twice in the year, you were able to do them 10, 12, 15, 20 times? For us as a church, listen, this is super important because it is easy to get distracted as an organization, as a church, as a community, right? I love this story in Luke 10, 38 through 42. Jesus comes and he's with his friends, and it says, as Jesus and his disciples continued on their way to Jerusalem, they came to a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home, and her sister Mary sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he taught. But Martha was distracted by the big dinner that she was preparing. She came to Jesus and said, Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits here while I do all the work? Tell her to come and help me. Some of you are like, I vibe with Martha. But the Lord said to her, my dear Martha, you're worried and upset over all these details. There's only one thing worth being concerned about. Mary's discovered it, and it will not be taken away from her. Now, I need you to get this. Was anything that Martha was doing sinful? No, it was good. Dude, just a little bit later, Jesus probably ate this meal and was like, thank you, Martha. I appreciate the home-cooked meal. But see, what was happening is at that moment, Jesus came in and he sat down to teach for a minute. And Martha was so distracted by all the rest that she couldn't pause for a minute and be like, you know, the meal is important, but it needs to wait for a minute because right now I should just sit and listen to Jesus. He's teaching right now. In a little bit, he'll stop. He'll relax. We'll get to make the meal and we'll have it together. But I can't get distracted from the most important things. And this is so critical for us as a church because you see, in the season right now that we're in, the beginning of this new season, beginning of this new year, new building, new people, God's growing the church, it would be so easy to go in 1,000 different directions. But so many of them, friends, are distractions. You see, for us as a church, we know the season that we're in right now. God started it a number of years ago. He told us he wanted us to increase in influence so that we could connect over 1,000 people in the Illinois Valley to Jesus. The number 1,000 doesn't really even matter. The reason why that number was cast is it was a number bigger than we could imagine at the time. At the time, we had less than 250 people coming to our church. And we said, I think God wants to grow the church so that we could continue to have such an impact on this community. 1,000 doesn't matter. Like I said, 900, 1,500, doesn't really matter. Enough people in the community that people just consistently keep running into these irreligious Jesus followers everywhere they go. And that it would tip the balance, it would tip the temperature, it would tip the reality of our community. You see, there are lots of new opportunities in this new season, new building, new people, new ministry ideas. And you know what God's saying in 2024? Go straight. No. Don't turn. Don't go in some different. No. Go straight. I've been laying the foundation for what I want to do next for a long time. Build His church. Let me be real with you. Build His church wasn't a year focus. It's a new culture in our church. The idea that we take and we join where God is working. And what God's saying is like for this next year when you're wondering where you should go, I already laid the foundation. Just walk straight. Don't get distracted by something new. Lean into the things that you know are important. For us, what this means is we're going to keep doing what we do, and we're going to keep doing it better and better and better. We're going to focus on our weekends and make them the most amazing experiences you have in the next year. We're going to focus on our groups, and we're going to grow them to be better at discipling and creating community among people than ever before. We're going to focus on our kindness, go back into the community through Hope Week and the things we do, and invest in our community. And not only that too, but let me be really clear, the building still ain't done. God's like, don't go running too far off, right? Like, ain't done yet. Like, you're not over, like pivoting. Like, you might notice, you're like, yeah, this still needs some work, right? Right. Stay focused. So the first part is that idea of not being distracted, but the second part of it is this. Focus also means more clarity. The second way you can use that word focus is to take something that is blurry and make it clear. It's what you do with a set of binoculars or a telescope, right? You take something that is blurry and you make it clear. Some of you might not know this. You think you have really good eyesight. Some of you have really terrible eyesight. You're like, not me, right? But I mean in general that we have great eyesight. But you know what's fascinating about the human eye is there's a spot in the middle of your eye called the fovea. It's tremendously packed with cells. But if you take like a piece of writing or anything like this and you take it out of your foveal view and you move it to here, you can't read anything. Like literally the person next to you, you can barely see them and make out their form if you're staring straight ahead because all of the sensors in your eyes are like dead center in what's called the fovea. Because you're actually meant to be focused on one thing, not observing everything at a time. And some of you, as you went through this world in the previous years, some of you will sync up with this. Man, it seems like the world is getting blurrier and blurrier, doesn't it? Does it not seem like our world is just getting more and more blurry? Where you're like, what? Is it what? Like, some of you guys just walk around some days and you're just like, what is going on? Like, what? It doesn't even make sense anymore. It gets confusing, it gets scary, it gets weird, and the reason why is because you don't have a lens to understand it through. It's fascinating because Jesus said this in Matthew 6, 31 through 33, talking about it. And I wonder if maybe even back then people had the same thought. They're like, this world just seems so confusing and blurry and unclear. And he says this in Matthew 6, 31 through 33. Don't worry about these things, saying, what will we eat? What will we drink? What will we wear? These things dominate the thoughts of unbelievers, but your heavenly Father already knows all your needs. Seek the kingdom of God above all else and live righteously, and he will give you everything you need. He says, if you actually find a central focus, specifically, he says, if you put your focus on me, he says, the rest of the world kind of comes into clarity. It actually comes into focus. And I would say this is important for you because when I say like more clarity, I don't just mean that you would see things clearer. That is important. Some of you guys, it hasn't been the case, but I also mean like more of what is clearly the right thing. Some of you, you have your, like where you sit and then where you're going. And the problem is like, you sit in this scenario where it's like, I'm here, right? And over the course of a year, you have so many days, you have so many hours, you have so much energy. And your tendency kind of looks like this. Like you go this way a little bit, and then you kind of go this way a little bit. Then maybe you kind of circle back to where we were, and then maybe you go back to the start. And you're like, I don't think that was the right direction anyway. I think I need to go this way for a bit. Maybe I'll go this way, and then you kind of walk back the same way you went, and then you go this way a little bit, and then you get real confused, and you walk in a circle for a while, right? No? Yeah. You go back, you go this way a little bit, and you end up like here. You're like, well, I guess that was a year. It was a year. But you see, more clarity would be the fact that you actually get to see. You start out over here, and at the beginning of a year like this, I ask you, what's your passion? What's the thing you're most, man, it's everything to you. And what you do is you realize that I'm here, but you know what, man, my passion, the way I want to live my life, it's out here. And see, if we do this, we're never going to get there. We stay so close. But when you have more clarity, this is what you're able to do. You'll say, hey, instead of me just going in all these different random directions, maybe I just need to go here. And then, maybe I kind of course correct and I go here. And then maybe for a little bit, I do kind of go off course. But then I remember my focus and I go right back to it. And then I go this way a little bit and I go this way a little bit. And then here at the end of the year, here I am. I'm within striking distance of where I want to be. Now, here's what's crazy is those lines are the same length. It took the same amount of time. It took the same amount of energy. It's just that you kept them all going in the same direction instead of letting them go in 100 different directions. You see, that's more focus. That's more clarity in regards to your life. And I wonder, some of you really do have like this passion, this thing that you care about so much. It's your faith, your family, whatever the piece is, and it's there, but you just get caught in this where you don't have any clarity. And maybe today God is saying, let's clarify so we can move in the right direction. For us as a church, that's really important for us. We want to get more and more clear. Right now, our world is getting very, very loud. Very, very loud. But I think our answer is clarity. It says this in 2 Timothy 4, 3-5. A time is coming when people will no longer listen to sound and wholesome teaching, for they will follow their own desires and will look for teachers who will tell them whatever their itching ears want to hear. They'll reject the truth and chase after myths. But you should keep a clear mind. Look at that. Keep a clear mind. You have clarity in every situation. Don't be afraid of suffering for the Lord. Work at telling others the good news and fully carry out the ministry that God has given you. He says, keep a clear mind. Clarity is the answer to this problem that's happening in our world around us. So I need you to get this. When I think about this next year, as the world is getting louder, and 2024 is going to get really, really loud. I guarantee you it will. We as the church do not need to get louder. We need to get clearer. We don't need to get louder. The world's going to start screaming louder and louder and louder, and the tone just keeps going up and up and up, and the craziness just keeps going up and up and up, and the violence keeps going up and up and up, and all this, and louder and louder and louder, and people think the church needs to get out there and yell just as loud. And I say, I disagree. The church doesn't need to get louder. It needs to get clearer. You see, for us as a church, what we want to do in this next year is we want to have the clearest systems of growth and discipleship that we've ever had before. We want to have the clearest teaching and worship and focus that we've ever had before about God's word, about the application to our life, so that confusion can be constantly cut off by clarity. We as a church want to offer clarity to a world who cannot find it. Friends, we are the ones who believe there is one true God. 3 persons in one, the creator of everything. We are the persons who believe that humans are broken by sin and destined for hell without salvation. We are those who believe that Jesus' death, his burial, and his resurrection are real and are not metaphors. We are those who believe that salvation from sin is found in no other path except Jesus. We are those who believe that anybody, and I mean anybody, who calls on Jesus in faith will be saved through him. We are the ones who believe that God's word is 100% trustworthy, inerrant, and true in every single way. We're the ones who believe that all humans have dignity and value as image bearers of God. We are the ones who believe that humanity was made to be male and female in God's beautiful binary. We are the ones who believe that our sexuality was created by God as a blessing, and his covenant of marriage and what he speaks about has not changed but is still a blessing. We are the ones who believe that we belong to God, and everything, including our money, must be used to honor him. We're the ones who believe that our rights in our life come from God and God alone, not from a government, not from a nation, not from some other body. We're the ones who believe that children are gifts given by God, deserving our protection, deserving our devotion, deserving our lives. We're the ones who believe that God's glory is the very purpose of our lives here and now on earth, and we are the ones who believe that our Christ, Jesus, is coming back soon, and it is our job in the meantime to get this earth prepared, preparing our own hearts and as many people as possible for the coming judgment day of Christ. Listen, I believe God wants us to focus in 2024 because I think it's going to be a year of distractions. I think it's going to be a year of distractions. I think that this world is going to try to pull you 1,000 different ways in 2024. I think God is calling us in this moment. He's like, before we even step into this, let me be clear, because there's going to be a bunch of random things that are going to try to take your attention. A bunch of weird religion, a bunch of crazy politics, a bunch of all these things that are going to try to pull you away from it. But I need you to get, no matter how chaotic, no matter how blurry, no matter how wild the world gets, I need you to know that you need to just focus on me in 2024. We need less distractions. For you, ask yourself this question for a second. What is the thing you are truly most passionate about? What's the thing that's really most valuable at the center of your life? And then think for a second as we go into this year, what are the distractions that you need to cut away? Like I said, there's a lot of things that they're not necessarily sinful. They're just wasteful. They're just distractions. They take your time, your money, and your energy away from that center point. Some of you, technology has stolen your attention from your family. And binge watching has stolen away your ability to literally fall asleep and get a good night's sleep. Some of you have so many extracurriculars, so many activities you participate in that you barely get to exist in one key area. For some of you, it's the consumption of products. Alcohol and weed in and of itself might not be sinful, but you let it steal away so much of your life. You just use it to numb yourself and to step away from what your actual focus is. For some of you, your material possessions have taken the center place of your heart, and you used to work hard to get things, to bless your family, and now all you do is worry about these things. And for some of you, worries have overtaken your mind. Anxiety and stress have actually become distractions. It's not the idea like, well, you shouldn't be stressed because you're a Christian. I'm saying it's literally wasting your life away. You think, I need to let go of these things. For some more of you, you need more clarity. What are the things in this next year you need to get a better view of? Or how about this? What are the things that are clearly the most important, and how could you give so much more energy to it? How could you do less but do more of the things that really, really matter in this next year? Some people be like, focus, Cameron. Does this mean, you want me to slow down, right? Us as a church, we're going to focus. We're going to slow down. Are you kidding me? No, not at all. In fact, here's the last verse I'll show you, and it's why I love this so much, because I read that Proverbs 4, and he speaks to what will happen if we actually get this focus thing right. Listen what Proverbs 4, 11 through 12 says. I'll teach you wisdom's ways and lead you in straight paths. And when you walk, you won't be held back. And when you run, you won't stumble. It's amazing because this whole idea of getting focused isn't about getting lazy or slowing down. He's like, actually, you know what happens if you get focused? He said, you move forward like never before. I love this. He says, you won't be held back. You know what held back means? It means God holding you back. Some of us, we walk in all these random directions. We're like, I wonder why I don't make any progress. And you're like, because the Lord loves you and he's been holding onto your collar, being like, no, don't go in that direction. No, don't go into that relationship. No, don't go into that job. And you're like, I just can't make progress. And God's literally like clawing onto the back of your shirt, like, because I don't want you to go there. He says, when you walk, if you're on this narrow path, you won't be held back. My hand will be behind you, giving you energy and wind and breath to keep moving forward. He says, you know, when you run, you won't stumble. And you know what that means? It means we won't get inside of our own head. We won't get in front of our own feet, and we won't trip ourselves up. You see, for so many of us, when we are on the narrow path, we always trip ourselves up. I love that Hebrews 11, it says the idea that we should strip off everything that weighs us down and the sin that so easily entangles. Some of you, you've tried to walk towards your passion so many times, and you always trip and stumble up, and it's your own sin, and it's your own head, and it's your own thoughts. And he says, if you get this focus, you'll be able to run and you won't stumble. You see, focus will help you go further and faster than any year you've had before. What if in 2024, when I say the beginning of this year, I could come up here and I could be like, and I could scream about something really exciting. But I was like, focus. And what if you actually lived that out and you went further and faster towards your passions than you've ever gone before in any year previously? Because God doesn't have to hold you back. You don't trip yourselves up. What if us together as a church, the reason why God's like, I just need you to go straight. I just need you to continue straight. Because we're like, God, we want to connect 1,000 people to Jesus in the Illinois Valley. And we want to grow a community that really just saturates this area. And where should we go, God? And he's like, just like straight. Just go straight. Like, don't get distracted by something else. I'm doing good work. Don't you see how much work I'm doing? Do the things you know you're supposed to do. Listen, here's what's crazy, okay? I'll just say this out loud. I don't want to say this out loud because it could be crazy, but listen. I told you that at Christmas we had 200 more people than we did the previous year. At New Year's Eve, we had 100 more people than we did the previous year. Both of those are 50% growth over last year. Do you know what that means? That if God did the same thing this Easter, do you know how many people would show up to our Easter services? 1,000 people. If God just does what he's doing, if we just keep doing faithfully what we're meant to do, it's within striking distance, friends. He's like, just keep walking in the good direction I have for you. I'm building my church. Just don't get distracted. So I'd love to pray for you today as we wrap up. God, I pray that this next year, you would take away all the distractions that have been trying to steal away our mind and our heart. I think for so many of us, God, this is going to be a great year. And right now, the devil's already planning out all these different distractions to take our attention away. Already we're getting mired down in the confusion and in the chaos and in the fog. And I pray, God, instead that you would just whisper the word of focus to us right now. That you would help us to pull away the distractions that would try to take us away from where you want us to be. And God, that you would increase the clarity in our lives. I pray right now, maybe even at the beginning of this year, watching this online or in this space, maybe someone even just says, that's what I want for this next year. And even in this moment, they would just pray and invite you, Jesus, into their life. They'd say, Jesus, come, forgive me of my sins. Become the king of my life. I trust you with my eternity. And even right now in this moment, they might put their trust in you. They had this year all in their hands, and maybe they're just going to put it in your hands and say, I think if I focus on you this next year, I think I'll get to somewhere better than I've ever been before. God bless this work in this next year. I pray that a year from now, we would look back and we would say, God, all we had to do was focus, and then God did the miraculous work that only he could do. In Jesus' name I pray.